And joining me now is Glenn Kirshner, MSNBC legal analyst and former federal prosecutor, and Olivia Troye, former Homeland Security and Counterterrorism advisor to former Vice President Mike Pence. Olivia, I want to start with you, and I want to start by playing Mark Wayne Mullin now, because Mark Wayne Mullin back then had a principled objection to Matt Gaetz. Here he is on the CNN much more recently, today actually.
Are you going to vote for Matt Gaetz?
You know, Matt Gaetz and I, there's no question that we've had our differences. They've been very public about it. I completely trust President Trump's decision-making on this one. But at the same time, he's got to come to Congress and sell himself. There's a lot of, or to the Senate and sell himself. There's a lot of questions that are going to be out there. He's got to answer those questions. And hopefully he's able to answer the questions right. And if he can, then we'll go through the confirmation process.
Do you even believe that they're going to answer questions? I mean, they should if they have an interest in the American people and American democracy. Do you trust that they will?
I want to believe that they would, and I want to believe that this is even too far for a lot of the Republicans on the Hill. But I don't trust it at this point. I mean, we've seen them fall back in line. We've seen them do the tap dancing that we just watched right now. Yeah. And I think that as much as we'd like to believe that some of these people have integrity and that they're actually going to do the right thing for the greater good of the country. Yeah. Since we used to be a country of laws. Yeah. And would like to remain that way, I would hope. I don't know. I have no trust in the system right now.
I think that's fair. Glenn Kirshner, your concerns as a former employee of the DOJ, and what are you hearing from folks there about this appointment?
Yeah, Joy. You in your lead-in reminded us that Matt Gaetz was investigated for potential child sex trafficking. However, he was never indicted. That's an important data point. Yes. But what was part and parcel of that investigation? The FBI prepared a sworn affidavit with evidence that satisfied a federal judge that there was probable cause to believe there was evidence of crime in Matt Gaetz' cell phone, issued a search and seizure warrant, and his phone was seized. It's not like this was some kind of a witch hunt. This was based on evidence. And as you say, he's still being investigated by the House Ethics Committee. I see this, Joy, as calculated by Donald Trump to send a message to the good people at the Department of Justice, 110,000 strong, the men and women, and I was proud to be one of them for decades, doing the people's work, attorneys and support staff who care about honesty, integrity, ethics, the rule of law, and allegiance to the Constitution. This is Donald Trump sending a message to them that y'all might as well just get out now while the getting's good, because look at who your boss may soon be, Matt Gaetz. And what self-respecting federal prosecutor would want to work under a guy like Matt Gaetz?
Yeah, it's a good question. Let me play that person that you just described, Matt Gaetz, talking about what he calls lawfare against Donald Trump.
We are here today to authoritatively express that President Trump did not commit an insurrection. The lawfare we've seen against President Trump will do great damage well beyond our time in public service. We are on a mission to rescue and save this country, and we ride or die with Donald John Trump to the end.
That's the potential new attorney general. Nightmare with me. How much damage could he theoretically do?
I mean, it's sickening to think that this person could be in charge of all of the different things that affect Americans across the board. Our civil rights. What's he going to do when hate crimes happen? What's he going to do when we have the rise of hate across the country that we're seeing every single day, even more so now, when some of these people are emboldened to carry out these acts? What's going to happen in that situation? What's going to happen with checks and balances when someone in the administration tries to skirt the rule of law? Those were numerous situations that happened during my tenure in the White House, during my tenure in the Trump administration. There were even things that where Bill Barr held the line, right? There were other people in the room. So we don't have that. So picture this. Now it's Matt Gaetz sitting in the Situation Room, having these debates on policy and saying, go ahead, I've got your top cover, I've got your back. That is what many of us were warning about. Yeah. This is the worst case scenario, to be honest. And I think Glenn is right. I've worked with a lot of the people at DOJ and the people that serve in the FBI under DOJ. I mean, this is just really alarming. And I wonder whether there'll be mass resignations. And that really actually worries me even more so, because
Yeah.
what does that department look like going forward?
It's frightening. And the thing is that, if you just go through all of the picks here, it's Marco Rubio, who will be a sycophant as Secretary of State. He's shown that. Pete Hegseth, we're going to talk about him more later. Matt Gaetz, Kristi Noem, who did a funny dance with Trump when he was on stage swaying. Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, my God. US
9/11 conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking
Really
Mike
exciting.
Huckabee, Elise Stefanik. I mean, this is not a cast of greats. The John Radcliffe, CIA director, Elon Musk essentially put in charge of parts of the government, cutting government. He couldn't be president because he wasn't born in the United States, but he isn't, and he has no government experience, but he essentially is going to be in charge. Do we have, I mean, let me just play for you, because the idea that senators would say no, that they would say no, that John Thune, who's going to be the new Senate Majority Leader, will somehow try to block this. The reason I have the same doubts you do is, let me play what Troy Nehls, he's not a senator, but he kind of, I think, represents the way that it's going to go down in Capitol Hill, on Capitol Hill next year. Take a listen.
There's no question he's the leader of our party. So now he's got a mission statement, his mission, and his goals and objectives, whatever that is, we need to embrace it. All of it. Every single word. If Donald Trump says jump 3 feet high and scratch your head, we all jump 3 feet high and scratch our heads. That's it.
That's the way it works, Olivia. And there are 20 Republican senators up for re-election in 2026. And Donald Trump is standing there today on Capitol Hill with Elon Musk next to him. The implied threat being he's got billions of dollars in Twitter. Do what I say or you don't have a job.
Yeah, and look, if they wanted to change the trajectory of the direction that we were going in, Donald Trump would not be president today. He would not have been the nominee for the party. This would have been over.
Yeah.
Back when he tried to overturn a free and fair election, right? So
Yeah.
that is where we are. And that's why I don't have confidence. I want to. This is my former party, this Republican Party that I belonged to for my entire life and believed in. But they are not exhibiting the characteristics that I believed in, such as actually standing for the rule of law. I mean, I think we're headed for one of the most, probably the most corrupt presidency we've ever seen in our lifetime here in the United States.
And Glenn, that could include going after anyone that Donald Trump wants to from the January 6th committee, anyone that he wants to that are Republicans who stood against him. People like our dear friend Olivia here. I mean, anyone who stood against Donald Trump is now got a sycophant in the AG's office that if Trump says prosecute him, former presidents, the Bidens, whoever, he could do it.
Yeah. And Joy, who will be setting law enforcement priorities if Matt Gaetz is the Attorney General? It will be Matt Gaetz, and he will likely be directing the FBI to go after Donald Trump's perceived enemies, whether there is evidence of wrongdoing or not. And I have a feeling the first criminal file Matt Gaetz might ask to be brought to his office if he is, God forbid, confirmed as Attorney General, will be his own criminal investigation so he can see who the witnesses against him are and maybe what needs to be done against them.
Not only that, Glenn, but the everything that was in the Jack Smith indictments, all of that is gone, right? I mean, Donald Trump has now effectively gotten away with attempted overthrow of the government, and he's now got an attorney general that is his guy.
Yeah, it's gone, Joy. It's gone in as much as we're probably not going to see criminal prosecutions. The reporting is Jack Smith is winding them down. Let's hope he's also gearing up to issue a fulsome special counsel report that reveals everything, including a lot of the information and evidence we don't know about yet. At least it will be saved for history and posterity, and a Matt Gaetz and a Donald Trump won't be able to just get rid of it altogether.
Yeah, we shall see. Glenn Kirshner and Olivia Troy, thank you very much, and God help America.